Call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community, especially Marty Judge from Manuka. Please keep the Judge family in your thoughts this evening. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild? Here. Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mr. Donahue?
Here. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, minutes of the Scranton Firefighters Pension Commission meeting held June 15, 2022. 3B, minutes of the non-uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held June 15, 2022. 3C, agenda for the non-uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held July 20th, 2022. 3D, minutes of the Scranton Police Pension Commission meetings held May 18th, 2022 and June 15th, 2022. 3E, minutes of the Composite Pension Board meeting held June 15th, 2022. 3F, overtime review for all departments as provided by City Controller, dated July 21st, 2022, for the period January through July 2022. 3G, minutes of the Ethics Board meeting held May 18th, 2022. 3H, memorandum received from Business Administrator, dated July 19th, 2022, regarding update on the financial performance of the city through the first 6 months of 2022. 3I, City Council complaint log, less code enforcement, dated July 25th, 2022.
Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
Two quick ones. So, the Scranton Police Department's National Night Out 2022 will be August 2nd, 6 to 9 p.m. at Scranton High. Together we making communities safer and more caring places to live and work. So save the date. And then next I have, there'll be at Lackawanna County Parks and Recreation, there'll be a tennis clinic for boys and girls ages 8 through 16 at McDade Park. The dates are August 2nd and 4th, 9th and 11th, August 16th and 18th. These are from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Please arrive by 9:45 a.m. Cost is $30 for 6 90-minute sessions. Deadline to register is August 1st. For more information, there's a number, and it's on a Facebook page that you can call, and the checks could be made out payable to Lackawanna County Treasurer. I'm thrilled to see that them tennis courts have been up at McDade Park a long time. I'm thrilled to see that they're still being utilized. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Do any other council members have any announcements?
Mr. President, just one. The City of Scranton's Parks and Recreation Department is going to be sponsoring Weston Fest at Weston Field at 982 Providence Road. That's August 20th from noon till 5 p.m. They'll have food trucks, bounce houses, music, hot dog eating contest, and community resources. I don't know if Joey Chestnut's going to be there for the hot dog eating contest, but that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other council members have any announcements?
Yes, I have two announcements. The first one, I just wanted to mention, I think it had opened up about a week or so ago, the application period for nonprofit grants through the American Rescue Plan Act. So guidance on how to apply for those nonprofit grants could be found on the city's website. And the other announcement that I had, on August 13th, there will be a 5K held and that's through an organization called Scranton for Ukraine. And more information could be found on their website at scrantonforukraine.org. But all the proceeds from the 5K will go towards Ukrainian refugees. And we also had a request for a proclamation to make that a Scranton for Ukraine Day, which we are considering, but unfortunately won't be able to do prior to our break. So that may be something in September, but I still wanted people to be aware of the 5K that'll be held. It's $30 to run, and that's from 9 to 10 a.m. On Saturday, August 13th. And there's also an option for a 1 mile walk, and that's $20 for registration, and that's from 9:45 to 10:30. That's all I have. Thank you.
And I just have just a reminder, the Scranton Municipal Recreation Authority will be holding the Electric City Flower Show Saturday, August 6th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at NAOG. Are there any other announcements? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
First on the list, Joan Hodowitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, Scranton. As of today, you're going to get 6 weeks off from standing here, sitting there, and us standing here. So I hope you enjoy your summer. Although poor Frank and his staff get no days off, you at least don't have to come in the evening. What is the status of the union contract negotiations?
It's my understanding they're still being negotiated.
I'm going to be asking Mr. Murray to keep a running total of how much we're paying Ufberg, because I think that's important. I see you're going to probably approve their contract tonight. I also see that in only 66 days, we're going to have the 2021 audit in hand. I cannot wait. I'm just tingling all over. With regard to item 3I, the BA's financial update, in particular the status of the pension fund, the composite pension fund. I went to the the July 20th meeting, I believe it was, when they presented the minutes for June 15th, and they talked about the fund having gone down from 135 million to 114 million over the 6-month period. And that's a loss of 11.46%. Now, I'm not suggesting that we run down the hall with our hair on fire screaming, but I will say that it is cause for concern and justification for close monitoring of the progress of that fund from here on out, because we do not know how long the stock market's going to be in the situation it is right now. We do not know whether we're going to have a recession. And all this is going to impact on January 1st of 2023 when the pension funds are reevaluated. And that's going to directly impact future MMOs. So it's something to keep in your hip pocket as you start planning the 2023 budget. Because you won't know that figure when you pass the budget. Just like you may not know the status of the union contracts when you pass that budget. But, moving on. With regard to 3I, the City Council log, the one item I'm really interested in is the property tax refuse fee database that was dropped some time ago from the city's website, where you were able to see who owed what, who was delinquent. And we've been waiting for that to be restored. And the last update was April 1st. I think 4 months is long enough. So hopefully when we come back in September, you can give us a status on that. What's the bottleneck? Is it the source that's supposed to provide the updated database, or is it IT, which is supposed to upload it? But that is an important piece of financial information for all city residents to be able to check that status. And during fifth order, I would appreciate 2 updates. One on the Pocket Park. I pass that every day, and I'm here to tell you that that steam shovel has not moved in weeks. It's just sitting there. And the other one is the Naog Park pool. I listened to your comments during the caucus, but I have 3 questions, and this is what I want to know. When are we going to get a pool? How much is it going to cost? And how are you going to pay for it? Master plans are fine, but this is just like stormwater. We just kick the can down the road, and sooner or later you're going to have to pay the piper. Seems that anything to do with water around here is cursed. So please answer those 2 questions, the Pocket Park and Naog, in 5th order. Will we have caucuses starting September on budget preparation?
Yes.
Good.
More than
And-
likely, it'll be Rubicon and the capital budget will be 2 of the 4 in September, but yes.
Okay, we need that. And I do want to compliment Frank. For several months, he's generated several emails to me without being asked. I wish the other departments in City Hall would be so kind as to answer the phone and answer emails. Frank is proactive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Daniel Kurz.
Hi, good evening. My name is Daniel Kurtz, live on Hemlock Street, and I recently moved here from Princeton, New Jersey at the council's invitation. My son and I were considering moving out of New Jersey. We were looking at different websites concerning communities, and Scranton had on its front page, come to Scranton. If you're a remote worker, come here, settle here. And also I heard a podcast from Mayor Cognetti talking about how the city is extremely interested in having remote workers come and settle and make life here because it's a wonderful historic community, it's extremely affordable, there's wonderful coffee houses, and it's all true. It's absolutely all true. This is a wonderful, beautiful community. The architecture is spectacular, and my son and I are extremely pleased. And my son is a public transportation fanatic, so you'll be hearing from him as soon as he gets back from his epic train trip around the country. But I never expected to come to Pennsylvania to be disenfranchised. I never came to Pennsylvania with the expectation that I would lose my right to vote effectively. But it seems that the head of the Republican Party, who is a seditionist, who was on the grounds of the Capitol and pierced police lines. With my own eyes, I saw this. I wasn't there. I mean, I saw it. He tweeted the pictures, making himself completely disqualified, according to the terms of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. He claims that the legislature of Pennsylvania has the power to nullify and reverse elections. This theory has many names. The independent legislature theory, states' rights theory, state sovereignty theory. He says that he can do it. I take him at his word. This traitor has actually written to the United States Congress under his own letterhead asking for the Biden victory to be decertified. It wasn't like a personal opinion of his. He actually put it on his letterhead, claiming under the position of his own authority that the will of the voters of the city of Scranton be nullified, canceled, reversed, void. I want to say right now that I understand, I'm a political science professor, and I understand how state governments work. I do. I understand that this is the city council. But people need to speak out. People need to say that as we sit here and do the really wonderful, wonderful workings of democracy, the give and take, people asking for quality services, that kind of thing, the basis of the entire system is under attack as we speak from the Republican leader and many members of the Republican caucus in Harrisburg. I did not move to Scranton, New Jersey to be disenfranchised. Absolutely not. Okay? Without your right to vote, without your right to coalesce and use that, you are nothing. The Constitution of the United States is clear. The 14th Amendment says that no state can violate or take away anyone's rights without due process of law. State sovereignty theory is crap. It's nonsense. It's discredited. It means nothing. It is the talk of anti-Semites and Christian nationalists in 2022. So I am going to say right now that I am not going to sit back and sit here and be quiet as bona fide Nazis in the state of Pennsylvania, people who will get onto social media and claim that Jews don't have to worry because we're not going to be deported. I'm not going to sit here and just be silent with that. By the way, the reason why I brought up the whole thing, the whole subject of the Jews and the deportation, is that the leader of GAB...
Mr.
Oh, I
Curtis,
apologize,
your
sir.
time- Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Your time, you get 5 minutes.
Yes,
Your
I
time is up.
apologize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the list, Doris Kozlowski. Next on the list, Doris Koloski.
May I approach with this paper?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Once it's printed out. Okay. I'm going to finish a couple statements that I ran over time on. I just want to say that most of us have had a lot of our biggest investments have been our homes, and it's just very sad that our homes will be really downvalued by the expansion of the Geisinger Hospital. Okay, the picture I gave you, I'd like you to look at. That's what it looks like with the parking garage shining in my bathroom window. Now, if they put that parking garage across the street from me, it would look like that in my bedroom and the bedroom of the family next door to me. This picture is what I see from my bathroom at night. Okay. My neighbors on Wheeler Avenue see that shining into their bedroom windows and their porches from that garage on the 327 Wheeler. You can't sit on our porch without being blinded in the evening by the lights from the hospital. This problem with the parking garage has been she's had this problem with the parking garage, has called them year after year after year, and they just ignore it. She's asked them to tip the lights down, put a shade over it or something. They completely ignore it. So that's what I'm saying is when you're dealing with them, once they get what they want, they stop the promises that they made to the neighbors. I don't know about anything else, but they don't keep their word. And that is why we can't give them the carte blanche zoning change they want. Because according to like April 1st, in the newspaper, it even stated where Mr. Beers had said at the meeting he had at the old nurse's home at the CMC, we will not build anything that's like 125 feet. Yet they came to the city. The city didn't come to them. That wasn't the proposed zoning, a zoning called civic. They came, they asked for it. And in that zoning of civic, they say they can build buildings that are 125 feet. It is one of the stipulations. They don't want to compromise on that. They wouldn't need to change. They wouldn't need to change that whole zoning description if they meant to keep their word and not build giant garages and giant buildings of 125 feet. In the beginning, they said they would build 3-story buildings with underground parking. Now they have no plan, which having no plan is pretty unbelievable. So all I wanted to say was I'm really hoping that you don't let them get away with this. I hate the fact that we were loyal, all the people that live around there were loyal people, loyal to the city. When the Great Migration to Clark Summit and the other things went, that's when all my friends moved to Clark Summit. We stayed, we were loyal, we supported the school system. Our kids graduated from all the public schools in Scranton. We paid our taxes, we put money into our house. And now my house will be unsaleable to anyone except the hospital. And then they can just offer you whatever they want. So I'm really hoping that you don't let this happen to our neighborhood. And thank you for your time and enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Next on the list, John Thomas.
John Thomas, Scranton. A while back, the DPW had a program at Johnson College where Johnson College students who worked on trucks and fixing truck engines would work on the DPW trucks. Do you know if that program is still in existence?
I don't off the top of my head. I can find out for you.
I'm going a while back. It was Mr. Pisano, I believe, was the head of the DPW. This is quite a few years back. And that program doesn't exist anymore?
I don't believe it does, but I'll double check.
You have your own mechanics, is that?
We do have, I think there's 4 city mechanics.
I thought that was a pretty good idea by that man. You know, it didn't cost the city any money, you know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
They worked on the trucks and the students. The shoe store on the corner of Penn and Linden caught on fire a couple of years ago, as you know. And I wonder if you have an update what they're going to do with that building.
So I know that they went in front of the Architectural Review Board with plans to tear it down, but it lacked detail in terms of how it was going to secure the wall of the building. So the HARB denied the request and wanted more information coming back. That's the last I know about it. But they were supposed to come back with more engineering plans on how they were going to stabilize that outside wall of the building next door.
Okay. Do you have an update on the Potch Park on the corner of Wyoming and Linden?
Yeah, I was going to address that in fifth order, but last week we had Scranton Tomorrow in. They put the bids were closed a couple weeks ago for construction of that project that included filling in the hole. That will be, I believe that should be awarded in the next couple weeks. The money has to be expended by the middle of February, so it's my understanding that the project will be completed by the middle of February.
Okay, thank you very much, and have a safe summer, Council.
Thank you. Next on the list, Ron Ellman.
Hello, Council. Tonight, I'd like to have a minute or two of my outrage. Somebody in my neighborhood has been poisoning cats and squirrels. I buried 2 of them last week now, and 2 squirrels. And as an animal lover, this is heartbreaking when you see their mouths open and how they died in agony. Several of the animals just have gone. They're not there. What happened a couple years ago, the lady behind us moved, whatever the reason was, and she had about 15 cats in the house. They're all over the neighborhood. I know it's a bad problem, but this poisoning been going on for a year or so, and several of the people in the neighborhood have it sort of narrowed down to somebody on Troop Street. This is just, it's just, I don't know what you're supposed to do with an abundance of cats, but this isn't the way to get rid of them. The last 25 years, Roseanne and me have spent, I could buy another car for what was spent on animals and having them neutered and so forth, and taking them to the Old Forge Hospital when they were sick. Just what? I'm talking about just animals that aren't ours. Now to have someone poisoning them, there's something wrong with these people. And last week I complained about when you mess with my pocketbook, it makes me irritable. Well, for some reason, HUD bought the mortgage on my property July 7th. They just sent me a letter that they bought it. It doesn't say why. You know, I have a reverse mortgage. And once a year, this gentleman comes by to see if I'm still living in the house. Last year, my neighborhood had diminished so badly, the insurance went up. I explained because they told me the board foot I owe so much, and the house isn't worth any more like it was a year or two before that. Last night, when I walked my puppy, there was a tractor trailer parked on city property at the bridge, Parker Street Bridge. I think it's time something's done about that. That's what diminishes people's houses, their property values. And the 2 junkyards behind the houses on Troop Street, 120 and 122, not a thing. I know the city talked to them, but they didn't move nothing. There's a guy still sleeping in a camper trailer that's a bus. There's a broken down car been on the street for over a year. There's grasses growing under it. My neighborhood didn't look like this when Mr. Courtwright was in office. Mr. Doherty, Jimmy Connors, my neighborhood was nice. Ms. Cognetti has allowed the licensing bureau just to step all over her. The way that whoever's responsible for North Main Avenue ought to be fired. There's no sense in the way grass aren't cut. There's boarding houses all over the place, illegal boarding houses. People park on the front lawns, and that's the first, really, that's what starts a neighborhood downhill, is cars parking on your front lawns making a mess. But I think I'm going to have to just put pictures of Bidenville all over my son's computer if this isn't cleaned up immediately. And it'd be so simple to stop the trucks down there. Put some signs up, no overnight parking, or put some concrete barriers up.
Thank you, Mr. Elman. We'll forward that along to code
I
enforcement.
know you did what you could. I'm not saying that. But I'd appreciate something before the man comes and looks at my house again.
Thank you, Mr. Elman.
Thank you.
Next on the list, Tim Schwartz.
Hey, everybody. Tim Schwartz. I'm the president of the Hill Neighborhood Association, speaking in support of our neighbors like Doris, and not on behalf of them. This is kind of a perspective from the Hill Neighborhood Association about the zoning issue on Colfax, supporting all the residents, not just those who live on Colfax, but those basically that live from Harrison up towards the park. I want to first say thank you for your responsiveness to my comments a couple of weeks ago. I really appreciate that. It's refreshing to get feedback, and so thank you. I want to make clear what some thoughts from the Hill Neighborhood Association on the zoning changes. You've heard a lot from people saying, that about what Geisinger's doing. From my perspective, it's important that in this city we have good hospitals. That we have a hospital that can expand and grow, bring good services into this hospital, or into the city, that this city needs better hospitals. I don't want to be afraid to go to the hospital when I get sick. So I think absolutely we need better hospitals. I think if you talk to people in the Hill neighborhood, in those blocks, they'll say, yes, absolutely. We need better hospitals. However, from my perspective, probably from the Hill neighborhood perspective, if the bringing better hospitals into the city, bringing more services into the city, because by doing that through devastating neighborhoods, I think we're not okay with that. I think the majority of people in the Hill would be very cautious about the expansion of the hospital at the cost of devastating entire neighborhoods. It's been months now that I've been listening to the heartache and the grief and the anger and the pain of the neighborhood because of the proposed zoning changes of a change that started as a civic area and may have changed or whatever, but is still threatening to a neighborhood, still allows for the neighborhood to be devastated. We would ask from the Hill Neighborhood Association that you would consider, as you're making these decisions about the zoning, that you would consider the residents who are there, that consider the history of the neighborhood. I was talking with somebody last night who was telling me about how he raised his kids on Colfax, how he remembers his kids running up and down Colfax Street, playing ball in the street and stuff like that. And every family from Arthur to Harrison talks about how, that has been their home, their generational houses there. And now when you go down Colfax, it's all gone. There's a lot of grief in that. We want the hospital to expand, but not at the cost of devastating neighborhoods. I think in your hands right now with the new zoning map, you hold a lot. You hold the livelihood and the quality of life of not just the people on the 200 and 400 block of Colfax, but the 40, 50, 60 families on the surrounding neighborhood as well. Traffic's going to have to be working that way somehow. Doris talked about lighting, noise, all that stuff. Those are quality of life issues. Those are issues about livelihoods. You hold that in your hand as well. I think another thing that you hold in your hand is that if the zoning for that part of the neighborhood does not change, it puts every neighborhood on call. That if there's a big business in the area that wants to expand, to bring jobs into the city, to do something that is great for the city, which is good, our homes are at risk. Our homes are at risk of being bought up. Our neighborhoods are at risk that if my neighbor is willing to sell out or sell their house, it'll be plowed down and I'll be like, my house will be like Doris's house, the one of the last 4 on my block, and now a dust field, which is one block away from where I live right now on the 800 block of Myrtle. So I think be careful with that. I ask that You listen to the neighbors, you listen to their grief and their pain and their heartache and everything like that. And I also ask that you seek a win-win-win scenario. A scenario where the hospital wins, a scenario where the residents win, and certainly a scenario where the city of Scranton wins as well. So thanks for your time, and appreciate you listening. Thanks.
Thank you. Next on the list, Norma Jeffries.
Good evening, Council. Norma Jeffries, Scranton resident. And I have to say to this gentleman here, my son graduated from Hun School, and he went to college in New Jersey, so I'm very familiar with the Princeton area, and the architecture up there and the architecture here in Scranton is very similar. I've been back in town 4 years. So I say all that because, Council, as you know, I've been standing up here for 4 years with my concerns for the city of Scranton. When I returned to Scranton 4 years ago, I was very concerned about different issues, but I'm not a complainer. If I'm going to see something that needs to be done, I'm going to see what I can do to take care of it. Of course, the first thing that I ran into was the street signs. It's been 4 years that I've stood here at this podium asking about the street signs. As late as last week, I asked for a callback from the DPW. I have a picture of me down at DPW with the guys that make the street signs. I had a tour down there, and it was a very enlightening tour. I came back very excited, thinking that we were going to move forward with getting the street signs up. Unfortunately, that has not occurred. I have not seen any advancement at all in getting the street signs up. And I know that they tell me that there's only 1.5 persons working down there, but they do and have added other people. So it's a concern that they can rush and put up the Biden signs, that they can rush and put up those, and it was a different color too, it's brown, because when I went for the tour, everything has to be green and that pixelation. So the signs that they put up for the Biden signs had to be a lot more work than them to go through and put the signs up, all the missing signs in Scranton. So I hope this gentleman has good GPS so he can work his way through the area, because the signs are still missing. So it's a big concern of mine, and it's a very disheartening to know that it's taken over 4 years, and the only signs that I see are up, unfortunately, are in the neighborhood where I live. That's not right. That's not right. Everyone deserves to have a good street sign in their neighborhood. So for the good side and for the upside is I noticed the banners all hanging out front. And I think someone mentioned about the National Night Out is going to be next week. August is the first week of August is a very busy week. So I hope everyone takes advantage of all those things, like the Police Night Out is the first one. The Scranton Jazz Festival is the next sign that's up out there. And then, of course, the third sign is our flower show. And, I've been talking about it. We've put a lot of work into it. We've been meeting since the fall to get it together, and we're very excited about it. And all we have to do now is pray for a good day, that it's not too hot, and it's not too this, and it's not too that, so that we can have a good representation of the activities that go on in Scranton, so that everyone can enjoy the work and the things that have gone into it. I wish you all a very nice August time off. It's, like I said, the first week of August is very busy, and I don't want people going out of town that first week, but after that, they can go out of town. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll continue to talk about the street signs.
Thank you. Next on the list, Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council. Lee Morgan. The first thing I have here is that a Scranton resident came up here and spoke about the hospital and the garage that I guess they plan to build. And I'd say to that woman, not to waste much of her time and take a collection off of her neighbors and call the Pennsylvania Bar Association and find an attorney, or go to Philadelphia and find an attorney. And it's not that I don't believe what the Hill Neighborhood Association representative sent here today, but I wouldn't waste much time with that, because this battle's in court. And if it has to go there, you should be prepared to take yourself there, because politics just isn't going to help you very much. And the second thing I have is, you know, another speaker spoke about the Constitution and elections. I hope that every person would pick up Pennsylvania's Constitution and see who can change election law in Pennsylvania. It's not the court, and the court did that, and it's illegal. Only the legislature in Pennsylvania can change election laws, which threw the whole Pennsylvania election into chaos. And really what should have happened is all the votes in Pennsylvania should have been tossed out, and the election should have been held over again. And when you see what's taking place across this country, history is going to record what occurred. And it's not going to be very pretty. And it's definitely shaken our country right to its foundation. Now, I personally have a constitution. I have a federal constitution and a state constitution. I don't pretend to be a constitutional authority, but I understand them because I own them. They're my property. They're my right. They're my birthright from my ancestors who voted to accept them in law. They're everything I stand on is the Constitution, both of them. I don't stand on politics. I don't care about the Democrats, and I surely don't care about the Republicans. But I do think that when somebody comes into a chamber and calls someone a Nazi, I think that's way overboard. Okay? And don't forget, Sam Rosen lived in Scranton, and he took his family by wagon to the extermination centers in Poland. Watch Judge Mundley's interview with this man. Now, I spoke to this man maybe once or twice and get a real understanding of what a Nazi is and what they do. And when you throw statements around that loosely like that, that's just a terrible, very troubling thing to say. But he has the right to say it because the Constitution says he can. But he should apologize. Now, the last thing I have here is, I've done 3 videos so far on ECTV. I intend to do a series more. I've asked ECTV to tie the 3 of them together. I think it's very, very important that we rewrite the charter for the county and the city together at one time. You know, we've got a gentleman here on council that wants to be a state representative, and my question is, what about all this grant money we're throwing around? I think that the city should come forward and tell us where, and I think the council should want to know this, where the grant money has gone for the last 50 years in this city. Where has all the money that's come into this city for 50 years gone to? It's not to throw stones at anybody. Let's see where this grant money was spent, how it benefited the residents, and what ultimately happened to all these assets. Very important. Because, you know, we're always talking about spending a lot of money, and we're doing a reassessment, and the people in this community are already overtaxed. And we've blighted this city, and this city's in no better shape now than it was when it went into Act 47. And don't forget, Mayor Doherty pushed this city into distress, and we named a pocket park after him. And after he got elected, he torpedoed the pension plan, he built garages we couldn't afford, wasted tons of money in the park, built the bridge to nowhere, built all kinds of projects that the residents didn't need. And in my opinion, that's not what elected officials should do. They should empower the people they represent.
Next on the list, Jess Nolan.
Good Good evening, everyone. Jess Nolan, 1700 Black of Vine Street. I think I'm going to be brief. I'm really just here to say thank you. I was away on vacation, but had a chance to watch the footage from the previous two council meetings where Tim Schwartz spoke and Doris spoke, and I think we had another member of our NAOG area community concerned about the zoning changes had spoken to that issue. So I really just wanted to thank all of you for publicly expressing your concern and your sympathies with the community. For over a year, we've been in a state of uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen in our backyards and our front yards, not being able to advance home improvement projects because we don't know if we're just literally flushing money down the toilet to have a bulldozer come and knock our houses down when we're sort of forced to sell, even if we don't want to, even if we love our homes in our neighborhood, because they're putting something up that's just not something we can live with. The not knowing has been incredibly stressful. And so, to Councilperson Rothchild and Councilperson Donahue, and I think the rest of you are probably doing this work as well, of trying to get us information from the hospital. We have still not seen a plan. I think I was here 3 months ago, and, Kyle, you were kind enough to say, I'm going to try to get you a meeting, we're going to try to get answers. Councilperson Rothchild, I think you're also, trying to have conversations with Geisinger, and I think maybe you're starting to experience some of the frustration we've been experiencing in getting them to answer questions and provide information. So I thank you sincerely for doing that work for us, because they're certainly not communicating with us in any sort of proactive manner. And that's also really disappointing and really frustrating. I've emailed their community representative about debris on my property several times, no response from them. And actually even more disappointing to me is I've emailed the mayor's office, I've called twice and received no response from her office about her position on what's happening with the hospital. And again, that's just disappointing to me because I know Paige and I like Paige, and on this issue, I feel a little bit abandoned by her office, unfortunately. So it's very refreshing to have our city councilors listening to us, hearing our concerns, and trying to sort of, be in the middle to help us figure out, if there's some compromise that we can come to. It really does mean the world to us. We're very concerned, as you've heard from others before me, and so I really just mostly wanted to say thank you, and please do keep us updated as you learn more.
Thank you. That exhausts the sign-in sheet for this evening. Would anyone else like to address council?
Tom Coyne, Manuka. Recently, I had the opportunity to visit the next door in the governor's room and watch the ethics board meeting. They are trying desperately hard, and they are going to be bringing before this body a change in the ordinance because they have found a glaring loophole that is within the documents of their procedures. I'm not going to go into that. They can go into that when they bring it up at the beginning of the next session that this council will be holding. I find them to be a very interesting group. Unfortunately, they are lacking a lot in the knowledge and depth of what the regulations actually are. They understand ethics. They understand what should be done. They are trying to put their grasp around what is best for this city, but they are seriously lacking in the understanding of how ethics and the city's laws and the laws of the state come together and intertwine to make procedures that should be held going forward. What are violations? At what level of violations are they? And I understand they are somewhat shielded from that because they cannot even make a decision on whether something is ethical or not until it gets ruled upon by independent bodies and brought before them. it's a daunting task. I just look at them in this organization, and I think the intent is wonderful. I think they're good people. I think there is a serious lack of understanding of the total scope that binds together ethics, and they need to have some way of getting training for that. They have their own budget, which is tiny, minuscule, but there is no training, there is no office trips, there is no the equivalent of HR to show them and communicate with them what actually needs to be done by that body. They're sort of running by the solicitor, asking questions and hoping to get the right question, ask the right questions to get them answered. It's sort of reaching around in the dark, and that's an issue. In 2019, I first came before this body, and I brought forward cybersecurity as one of the big issues. An exiting council member looked at that, listened to me, and brought it forward, and it couldn't be discussed for security reasons. Shortly after me bringing that forward, the issue of cybersecurity did come to the front as the city of Scranton was hit with ransomware. By putting off my comments, the city now has a burden of $170,000 a year extra insurance payments because of that cyber attack. City government has a fiduciary responsibility. It has an ethical responsibility, and it has a responsibility to work with the people. I think there has been serious lack of communication between the people and isolationism, which is signified by the locked door in City Hall as a perfect example. I brought before this body, when something comes before it to be introduced, a representative should introduce it, because you cannot cross-examine or ask questions of a cover sheet. In Maryland, they do that because it is part of defining intent by the courts, is to understand the legislative intent. That cannot be done by a piece of paperwork. These are all failures of the body to secure the laws it puts forward. And last, this body is often criticized because they have not put on referendum Biden Street. That is not the fault of this body. This body ruled on it, this body put it forward, the mayor signed it. The citizens themselves, as I talked on this dais, had 30 days after that to request, petition, and put out a referendum. It's not this body's job to put out the referendum. It was the populace who failed to move forward in their obligations. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address council?
Marie Schumacher, I will start by asking Tom if he has the percentage of exempt and non-exempt properties.
I did reach out via electronically and in person to Mr. West to get the update on that. I know I'd say about 3 years ago it was about 36%. He said he is going to get me the current percentage of exempt and non-exempt, so I'm waiting for that.
Okay. Oh.
Go ahead with number two.
Oh, pardon? I'm sorry.
I also spoke with the law department on the the right-of-ways. There are 44 right-of-ways, and only one has been secured at this point in time. And then they're going to put out the RFQ, RFP process to get the legal services to go towards the rest of them.
Who is I'm off my schedule here, but who is the project person on that?
Andrew Cotillo from the law department was the one that I spoke to regarding the right-of-ways.
Andrew, never heard that name before. What, spell the last name for me?
Cutillo.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, I'm going to do something selfish, and I'm going to ask that you try your best to get Mr. Priambo back. I mean, when you called over there, you got something done within 3 days. Now, it's not 3 days, it's not necessarily 3 weeks, and our roads are a mess. And Pennsylvania Water, I think it was, a utility anyway, came through on Steamboat Avenue, and at the last portion where it meets 307, God only knows what, but I get seasick when I go by and my car cries. And I know they've been called, and I've even seen somebody out there arguing with somebody else over what was done there. So I think we had somebody who got the job done, and I think we should try to bring him back. Now, I would like to say, as you know, that I have been very disappointed with you people. It certainly started when, and I asked the people on Colfax Avenue to be careful, because 4 of these 5 people listened to people from Spruce Street come here and say why they should not have to change the name of the street and what it was going to do to them. And didn't take long, but this body voted 5-0 to go ahead with what they wanted, or somebody else who was controlling them wanted, and not what I believe was right. And then also, when you first came here, you were going to do things, you had policies, and we were going to have work statements and stuff. I know that's not happening, because I have done right to knows to ask for policies, and what I get back is maybe in 30 days we can help you. So, I mean, what have you done to get them to do what they're supposed to do? I think it's terrible. And, I mean, the code, another thing. Does anybody ever read the code? Do you know that in the code we still have the, get this one? We still have what it was called the South Scranton Complex, Sports Complex. How long has it been since Mayor Doherty sold that to the University of Scranton? And it's still here. That shouldn't be. Then I would like to know, with regard to policies, because I got a letter that I know that each of you got that was anonymous, but I would like to know the policy is it normal for the city to allow people who are incarcerated to use their vacation, personal and sick time to get paid while they're incarcerated?
We did pass that request along. We haven't gotten a response yet.
Pardon?
We passed that along to the administration for clarification on what the policy is, and we haven't gotten a response yet.
So we will not, how will we, that's before I give run, I have. Will we have the third order stuff while you're gone, the 6 weeks?
It will all come into for third order in our September meeting.
You mean
if there's anything you're looking for, we'll pass that along to you.
Well, no, I just meant, if
just
everything.
let us know.
Yeah, weekly rather
All
than.
right. Seymour Ave, was that the entire length or just the?
Negative, it's about the last, well, I don't know, I'm not too good on,
But it's more towards 307.
oh, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address council?
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident, taxpayer. I have a question. where is the policeman tonight? You know?
I have the same question.
Uh-huh, okay. Last week I mentioned about security, and I would hope that the mayor would be a little more responsive. I mean, Joan is a very intelligent person, and she probably has something decent to offer, and respectful, by the way. I went down to pay my taxes, and at the county building, and I praised the single tax office. But by the time I got past the sheriffs or deputies, I knew how a returnee from a work release program felt. I mean, it was like pull up my shirt and all kinds of stuff, empty my pockets. Okay, well that's fine and dandy, but I wish they'd keep in mind that I was there to pay some of their wages. Maybe it's just the dollar that they would have got out of the money, but they would have gotten something. And I would appreciate if we try to establish a better relationship with the mayor and council, and we really need to try to settle these city contracts with keeping in mind public workers, that everybody doesn't get a 10% raise just because of inflation. And if a Social Security recipient gets a 10% wage, it's probably too little stacked on top of too little anyway. Every year, your actual income shrinks. Okay. We had a comment here about the governor race and white Christian nationalists or Nazis, nationalists, and I agree. You know, there's a site called Gab, and our governor candidate in the Republican Party donated $5,000 to that site with all kinds of white supremacists and all kinds of bull. And by the way, states are not sovereign under the Constitution like some people think. We are subject to the federal Constitution, because actually if you literally enforce the Pennsylvania Constitution, churches would have to pay property tax and income tax. There wouldn't be any of this tax-free institutions that really aren't of a functional nature, like a hospital or nonprofit hospital or nonprofit insurance company. You cannot, under the PA Constitution, as I remember it, you cannot be required to support an institution, a ministry that's described as, that you do not believe in or are not a member of it. So, therefore, if we have to pave the streets in front of their church, and we have to provide police and fire protection and everything else, all the amenities, plowing, and you would actually, under Pennsylvania Constitution, have the right to probably charge them property taxes. And they run around making all this trouble, like over birth control and nonsense like that. The world's too overpopulated now. It's way too overpopulated, and all they're going to result with depriving young people of contraception is generating more street urchins, because eventually there's nothing to do. I grew up in a house that wasn't so great, and it was out in the street after 16 years old. That was it. I couldn't take being at home. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Would anyone else like to address council? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. King, do you have any motions or comments?
Just a few comments I mentioned earlier at the, during the caucus. I understand that Mr. Laser has met with someone from the city concerning the PPT tax. You recall we had that letter from Mr. Laser and from Attorney McGovern, so I would just like to get a follow-up as to what the result of that meeting was. If you could check into that for us, Frank.
I will, Mr. King.
Thank you. And just also, I'm going to mention this one publicly. There's been an abandoned vehicle on Birch Street that we've been trying to get rid of for months. Now there's painting around it. Looks like they're trying to do some road work or the utilities. I just implore the Scranton Police Department or whoever to please get that vehicle. There's no license on it. It's my understanding. It's abandoned. Someone moved and it was a leased vehicle and they abandoned the lease. But it's just been sitting there with no registration or license on it for months. So if we could just really push to get that vehicle moved out of there, the neighbors are deeply concerned about that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schuster, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, so a couple tonight here. It came up tonight, some of the sections that were missed. I know Mr. King brought one up last week between Birch Street on East Mountain. I know Ms. Schumacher brought...
The paving, right?
Yeah, paving sections that were missed. When the original paving list was put out, a resident contacted me about East Elm Street, and he said that there was a section of about 155 feet on East Elm Street that was probably going to be forgotten in the paving. Me and Mr. Voldenberg did reach out to try to make sure that that was on the list. I know we got the response that there's nothing going to be added this year. I did speak with him today. He wanted me to let people know that he did put 7 tons of asphalt into the potholes on that section of the street. The road still does need to be paved. But maybe we can get that on the list for next year, or if, when we're looking into these couple sections, if something comes up or if the city decides to add it to the list. Some other things that we got, it was brought up in public comment tonight, the street sign project. I know we were presented a great presentation about the grant we received for the street signs. If we could please reach out to DPW and see where we're at with that, with the street sign replacement project. And then we also got a request out of caucus for the 900 block of Quincy. I know some of those addresses were put through, the person couldn't stay, but if we could also send those over to code enforcement for the 900 of Quincy.
I will, Mr. Schuster.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
I do. I have a number of things that I want to bring forward tonight. The first of which, we had asked the LIPS department about accessibility for City Hall and ADA compliance, and we had received a response from Mr. Eastman with suggestions and advice on what we could do to improve the situation with City Hall. So I just wanted to read out his suggestions and what I hope will change with City Hall to improve that. The first one would be 1 large or 2 regular handicap parking spots could be added to the rear of the building, not at the ramp, but a few spaces back. The handicap drop-off section at the base of the ramp could be relined by DPW. The restroom doors on the 2nd floor, so the floor we're on, are handicap accessible bathrooms because they do have a lock that is located at a lower position, so if someone was using a wheelchair that they could reach them. However, the restrooms on the other floors do not have those locks. I'm wondering if that's something that that could be added. He didn't state that in his email, but I don't see that as being too difficult of a thing to include and change the locks on the door so that additional restrooms could be accessible. And the automatic open mechanism on the way out is located in the rear of the building if someone needed to use that. We don't have one in the front of the building, but that one does have to be repaired, and so he's made a request for that to be taken care of. And then there's no handicap access at the front of the building. All handicap access is at the rear. There's no immediate plans to place a handicap parking spot at the front of the building because of that, because the way that City Hall is set up and where the ramp and accessibility to the elevator is. Then he had another note about sidewalks that were corrected with the curb. There was a question of 818 Ash Street and McKenna Court, and so that problem has been corrected. And then on the note of, so that's the end of his response for us, which I do find those suggestions to be helpful, and I'll be looking towards the city taking care of those issues for City Hall. On the note of restrooms, I did just want to make a comment that I was really happy to see this week. I believe that it had just changed this week because I just noticed it in the building tonight that we now have signs on the restrooms for all gender restrooms rather than separate men and women restrooms for the single-use bathrooms, which I feel very personally happy about and proud for City Hall for making even just that small change, which I know for many people won't matter, but for people who feel more comfortable with an all-gender restroom, that will be better. Or if, one of the restrooms is not available, you don't have to be concerned about using the other one that's labeled for the other gender. So there are a lot of advantages to that, and I was happy to see that, and I hope that encourages other places throughout Scranton to make that change too if they do have single-use restrooms instead of labeling them for one gender or another and making them all gender. And I wanted to bring up, we discussed this in our caucus about the NAOG pool update that we received, which is that they're not changing any immediate plans for NAOG or to give us other options like we thought we were going to receive, which I'm disappointed and frustrated in, and that instead they're going to come up with a master plan. They're going to use McLean to develop a master plan for the park, which I'm not against, which I do understand the need for a master plan, but I just wish it would have been thought of sooner, and now we have to wait even longer. And by the time I'm able to walk down to the park and have my daughter use the pool, she'll probably be in grade school. So just, as a resident, I'm sure to others that's disappointing. But I am interested in seeing what comes out of the master plan, what other suggestions there are, and what other grants we could go for. So I just want to make a note about that. And then for the Hill section and Geisinger's plans, I have been in conversations with the neighbors, and I did set something up for next Tuesday night, since we won't be having our council meeting, when I could meet with those neighbors in that area to hear out more of their thoughts and concerns, because I know 5 minutes is not enough for the time that they have to speak here, although I do appreciate them coming up, and I do love my neighborhood. And when I was a student at the university, I did rent within the Hill. Then we moved out to a couple other neighborhoods, and then we came back when we decided to buy our home, I think in 2017. So I know we love being there, and I understand how passionate other people feel about the neighborhood and wanting to still keep it as the neighborhood that they've always known. So looking forward to more conversations about that and continuing to push for more information from Geisinger and more communication between Geisinger and the neighbors. And I thank you to Councilman Schuster for bringing up the request for an update on the sign program. I was going to bring that up as well, because I would like to know where we're at with it, what new signs have been put out. I know we've been given numbers in the past as to the amount of new signs that were replaced, so if we can please get that update. And lastly, I just want to say thank you for the well wishes for our August recess. I do just want to remind everyone that it's a legislative recess. So we won't be taking new legislation during that period of time. We won't be having our council meetings, but I think I speak for the other council members that will still be available through email or through our clerk's office if you do have concerns. So it's not that we won't continue working on things. I have a pretty long list of what I'd like to do over the month of August with some of that additional time that I have, which I've done, which I've utilized that recess period for in past years because I find it really helpful to meet with department heads. I really want to visit more of our parks, which I haven't had the most opportunity to do, along with considering other legislation that we could possibly bring to council when we resume in September. So those are my plans. Oh, and I am traveling, but not the first week of August, Ms. Jeffries. So, all right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments?
I have a few. So today I took a ride over to check up on the paving concerns I brought forward last week from residents over in the Bull's Head area. And the issues, and Mr. Voldenberg, you sent down a request to inquire, so they got to send information and feedback. But the issues remain. So this week, or today, I took pictures. So I'm going to be happy to send you the pictures to back up the concerns that I received last week and that you already sent over. So on Blair Avenue, it's still curb to curb. I took a picture. It's not curb to curb, like we're always told by the utility companies. We're going to go curb to curb. This one is 3/4 paved, right? The 7-800 of Foster, half the road is paved, just half of the road going up one side of the road, okay? And then the 13 and 1400 of Diamond, the whole street was milled, okay? But only paved up the middle. And when I mean a patch like this. So I was happy to be able to speak to some residents there because they're on their porches. It's a little cooler. And the one lady on 1301 said, come here, come on over here, take a look. And I guess there was some type of subsidence in front of her house after it was milled. So my understanding is the utility companies told her that, there's an issue here, and she told me that the sewer company came, it was a collapsed pipe. Okay, that makes sense. And DPW came, they both did a great job, they filled it all in, but they've yet to pave. So, Mr. Voldenberg, so we need an update on that 1300 block of Diamond, because the whole street's milled, and there's just a patch up the middle. So, and of course, she wants to know when they're going to come back and pave it, if it's safe to pave. And I talked to some more residents today, and I still can't wrap my head around why you pave half a street, 3/4 of a street, or just up the middle, because, and this is all work that was done by the gas company. So, not only do these concerned residents pay city taxes and deserve a street totally paved, but they also pay the gas company, their customers. So, like I stated last week, we should be working with our residents, not against them, all right? And I believe, that the American Rescue Plan Act has monies that can be used for infrastructure and paving. So, please ask for an update. I know we didn't receive anything since last week's inquiry. That what are they going to do to plan to fix this and make it right? All right. And then also I have another property, a concerned citizen. This is about 5 years now, and it's a property on 319 North Sumner Avenue. There's blight issues and other issues, and these neighbors don't feel satisfied that anything's really been done with it in the past 5 years. So I don't see it on any of our current logs where it's somewhere, issued citations or we've had visits. So this is one that might have slipped through the cracks. I do remember speaking about this one or someone else bringing it up a couple of years ago, but we got to take a look at that one or remind them down there.
I will.
Also, thank you. Also, so, I sat in caucus tonight too, and we talked about the pool. I'm here 3 years, we've been talking about the pool, all right? And 3 years ago, this water bottle was the pool. It was in reach of all the little kids, I'm thinking, the pool's here. So then we had 2 or 3 meetings, and then in May, we had a meeting and another presentation where the pool is going to be 3 feet deep. That discussion never had. So then now they took the pool and they moved it from here all the way over to here with the master plan. I'm not against the master plan, but I want answers from the pool we've been asking for months. And Ms. Hodowanis made a great point. How much is it gonna cost? We still don't know. Who's gonna do it? Where's the money coming from? And when is it gonna be done? So the master plan is great, more bells and whistles. I'm okay with that, but, you know, we wanted a pool, we've been talking about a pool. At least tell us the plans that have been decided for the pool. You wanna know, I wanna know, I'm still waiting. So, Mr. Voldenberg, you know, circle around on that one, because we've been really asking about it.
I will, sir.
And then, months ago, I asked about contract negotiations, right? I said, when did you meet? Please give us actual sit-down, because we're told every week the negotiations continue and they're ongoing. I asked, I don't know if it was, I don't remember, maybe March or May. I said, how many times have you met since January, right? And they came back to us finally, and they only really met, the three unions only met maybe twice each, from January to March, right? So last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, again, I asked for an update on actual, and I mean physical negotiations where you actually sit down across the table from each other, right? Not phone calls, not anything else, right? So I did receive, we all did, all the council members received a memo, and it says confidential attorney-client privilege memorandum. Well, I don't think it's confidential. You guys need to know. You've been asking me about updates, so I'm going to tell you what I got, right? So since February, let's see. This is, the police have met in April, twice, and then June 3 times, all right? That's since our last time we brought this up. The firefighters have only met once, or twice, excuse me, wait, let me see. They've only met 3 times since February, all right? And then the DPW has met since the last time we asked, so let me see. 1, 2. There's only been 2 held since February, and 1 to be held July 27th. All right, so that's where we're at. I mean, there's not a lot of negotiation occurring. And like Ms. Sotowanis comes in every week and says, we're at day whatever. We're at day here. So I just, you know, I promise I get the information. I'm reporting that out to you. All right? Let's hope they get together and really get these contracts settled. Also, we were told a couple weeks ago, and a couple people asked me, they're like, hey, where's the DPW director posting on the website? We looked in your office earlier before caucus, right, Mr. Voldenberg? We were unable to find it. I don't know if it's on there somewhere. We were told there'd be a posting. That position needs to be replaced. The gentleman who had that position resigned. All right? So let's please get an answer on that. And then, what else do I have here? Also, an update on the power washer investigation, the usage of it. I've been asking for a couple weeks now. All I know is that it's official. I got nothing official, but it's still being investigated. So, and I asked for the surveillance for Sorrento. I never received that either. So I hope someone retrieved it. I hope they took a look at it, and we can wrap up this investigation sooner than later. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I was also going to bring up 319 Sumner. We must have got the same email. But I did give that to Frank, too, before the meeting, and he was going to look into it. In terms of some of the statements Mr. Ullman made, Mr. Voldenberg, would we be able to reach out to animal control and let them know about the poisoning of cats and squirrels? And also reach out to code enforcement about the area of North Main and Parker Street?
I will, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Schuster brought up the update for street signs. And can we also reach out to the pave cut inspector regarding Seymour Avenue, more specifically closer to 307? I could get you certain blocks for tomorrow too, but if we could reach out to them there. A couple updates I got for last week. Regarding the permit parking on the 200 and 400 block of Colfax, the police department said that they are still monitoring that and enforcing the permit parking up there. They are looking into whether or not they have to either move or add signs to make them more prevalent up there. And in terms of the wall, we did request an update from Lackawanna, the wall for the Radisson. We did request an update from Lackawanna County on the status. They did get a grant, but I believe that was only for the one section of the wall, the smaller wall going up the, but so we have to look at grant opportunities for the bigger project of the whole wall then that keeps up the parking lot for the Radisson, and then also for sidewalk and pedestrian safety there. And I know a part of that has been, that's been discussed, has been to move the bus station, because the bus station, or the bus stop on that corner really isn't in the most pedestrian-friendly spot there. But we are looking into that with the county grant department, because that grant was awarded through the county. And that's all I have for this evening. Mr. Voldenberg?
5B, no business at this time. Sixth order, no business at this time. Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, file the Council number 17, 2022, ratifying the execution of an easement agreement between Mary Beth A. Harrington, 1711 Wyoming Avenue, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, 18509, and the City of Scranton, granting the City of Scranton an easement and right-of-way over the property located at 1711 Wyoming Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file the Council number 18, 2022, amending file the Council number 57, 2019, and the file the Council number 100, 2021, in order to modify the 2022 real property tax and refuse fee timelines for certain taxpayers who did not receive accurate and timely tax bills.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, resolution number 99, 2022, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a professional services contract with Ufberg and Associates, LLP, for labor counsel for the city of Scranton.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, resolution number 100, 2022, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant reimbursement agreement between the City of Scranton and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for funds up to $1,120,200 from the Multimodal Transportation Fund grant to be used towards the replacement of the Ash Street Bridge.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7E, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 101, 2022, ratifying and approving the participation by the City of Scranton in the Sustainable Pennsylvania Community Certification Program.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7E.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7E legally and lawfully adopted.
7F, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 102, 2022, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for up to $744,670 for improved safety, connectivity, and implementation of bike lane infrastructure.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7F.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7F legally and lawfully adopted.
7G, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 103, 2022, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the PetSafe Bark for Your Park for up to $25,000 to be used to implement a dog park at the Central City Little League in North Scranton.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7G.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7G legally and lawfully adopted.
7H, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 104, 2022, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Commonwealth Financing Authority Multimodal Transportation Fund for up to $920,000 to be used towards the South Webster Avenue Sidewalk Bridge project.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7H.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7H legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, 8A, file of council number 9, 2022.
This piece of legislation is the updated zoning ordinance. It is continued to be tabled to allow for additional input, any amendments, and any changes.
8B, file of council number 16, 2022.
This piece of legislation is the 2022 HUD action plan. It is tabled for 30 days to allow for additional public comment. It will appear on our agenda when we return from recess in September. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.